All right, so here we go again in the introduction to Romanticism. We are looking at the concert hall situation. So if you remember, the concert was this new construct in the classical era of sorts where people would buy tickets to go see the orchestra. Unfortunately for composers, and this is true still somewhat today, the rise of public concerts led to audiences being very, very conservative in their musical tastes, in the sense that they wanted value for their money and they didn't want to buy a ticket for something they'd never heard. Remember, there were no audio recordings or anything of this day. So hearing a piece by a new composer or a lesser known composer, or a piece by even a composer they knew that they've never heard, was kind of risky in their mind for their value. Okay? So while Romantic composers seek to innovate and to push the envelope and look for individual ideas and really express in different ways, sorry, my low battery light came on, but I got enough. The audience was not into innovation or risking their money or paying for a ticket for a concert with a piece they might not like. And again, this is still true today in a lot of ways. So the classical era composers, Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn, they became sort of the staple of the concert hall, and it's still today. Every orchestra plays pretty much a Beethoven symphony every year, and has for a couple hundred years almost, or Mozart, or Haydn. But they're not going to play much stuff by living composers, or even composers from the last 100 years, not nearly as frequently, because they don't want to risk their donors not liking the music and stop donating and patronizing the symphony. However, touring performers become really popular at this time because they have this venue to play in. So we get the rise of touring performers. So the shift kind of goes from new music in the composer-centered world to the traveling performer playing cover tunes, essentially, of older music. So the audiences have become less sophisticated because of this, and their tastes favored the familiar as opposed to the new and innovative. Where composers are seeking to create new, innovative, distinct, and individual music, the audience isn't. So because composers are seeking individualism, it's very hard to tap down or to really kind of point your finger on a definitive Romantic style. They sought to be individualistic and to mirror their own inner emotional feelings and to be innovative. So they're trying to be highly distinct, not highly collective. There are some sort of overarching similarities, though. One, the treatment of rhythm. So the treatment of time, clock time, versus psychological time is addressed a lot. So the perception of the dream world, the way that time works in the dream world, or frankly, since opium was very popular at this time, and other known drugs, although they didn't see them as drugs yet, because they didn't fully know the long-term effects, their perception of time was skewed by taking opium. So composers begin to use this new concept called rubato, R-U-B-A-T-O, which means borrowed time. And that's your attendance question for the week. So email me, rubato, R-U-B-A-T-O, means borrowed time. And this is a very individualistic treatment of rhythm and time, as the rhythms are pushed forward and pulled back. All right, so if you've ever had a tape deck that the tape speeds at turns at a certain speed. But you can hit fast forward and it'll go a little faster, or you can hit rewind, or hold the tape and it'll drag. They talk about the tape dragging. That's how composers actually approach musical time with this rubato. The easiest way to imagine is to take a top and spin a top really fast. So it's spinning, and if you hit it just a little bit, it starts to wobble, it gets a little out of its focus, and then it regains its initial rhythm and catches itself. And that's how rhythm is treated. Very individualistic, always pushing and pulling, but eventually finding the beat. You're going to listen to this in a link in a bit by the composer Chopin. And his Nocturne is a very, very, very good example of this pushing and pulling idea when it comes to the concept of rhythm. Okay? Some other Romantic music ideas to start off with. They're basically two different dualities that exist in the Romantic era. The first one's pretty simple. One has to do with the length of the music. Music tended to be in these large, grandiose, novel-like structures, these long pieces with lots and lots of potential instruments, or little tiny miniatures, fleeting fancies of a singular idea or a singular concept that almost seem improvisatorial, or like something that just popped up in a dream quickly and disappeared. So music is either giant and large or small and tiny. The other duality that exists is the duality between the concept of program music, P-R-O-G-R-A-M, and absolute music. Music had always been absolute to this point. So there begins to be an argument, because of the influence of Romantic literature, if music needed a program. In other words, an extra musical idea, a story, a poem, especially instrumental music, a picture, a painting, to show the audience. The audience would read the story or read the poem or see the picture before they listen to the music, to really get the inner feeling or the inner emotion of the composer who's writing it. Versus the notion of absolute music, where absolute music says the music expresses itself. It doesn't need anything that's not music to influence how you hear it. And that was the big argument, in a way, is whose individualism. So in a program piece of sorts, I'm going to write a program or take a story and tell you what you're supposed to hear, me, the individual. Whereas in an absolute music piece, I'm writing, I have my own inner thoughts and ideas and feelings and emotions about the music, but I let you, the listener, listen. And if you hear a babbling brook, or you think that it sounds like a forest full of birds chirping with wind blowing, and I don't, that's okay, because that's your individual feeling. That's the problem with focusing on the individual. There's too many sort of right and wrong answers. The interest in Romantic literature this time no doubt influences this concept of having a musical program. Again, the real argument has to do with who is the individual, the composer expressing himself and telling you how to hear, or you hearing it and understanding it yourself. All right, until next time, same bat place, same bat channel.